A few months ago, I made a video about EPiC, Baz Luhrmann's latest Elvis film, and during filming that video, I had to stop myself because I realized something quite profound in my Elvis Presley journey, that sitting in that IMAX theatre seeing Elvis on the biggest screen humanly possible, watching footage of a man who died decades before I was born, that I was falling for him, and not for the icon, not for the jumpsuit or the mythology, but for the man himself. I've known Elvis my entire life. I mean, who hasn't really? I've grown up with him. I know the music. I know the history. I know how his story ends. But EPiC did something I wasn't quite prepared for. It deepened my knowledge. It deepened my love, and it made it personal in a way that it never had been before for me. And that sent me straight back to another film, the one made in 1970. That's the Way It Is. Because I needed to understand why. Why does the footage of this man, decades old, scratched and imperfect and silent until someone restored it, do that to a person? What is actually happening when Elvis Presley is on screen and your whole body knows it? That's what this video is about. Two documentaries 55 years apart, both trying to answer the same impossible question, and what they find when they get that close to him. For anyone that missed my EPiC video, the link is in my description, go watch it, but here's what you need to know. When Baz Luhrmann was making his 2022 Elvis biopic, his team went searching for archive footage. What they found was 68 boxes of 35mm and 8mm film sitting in Warner Brothers storage, preserved underground in salt mines in Kansas for decades. Outtakes, unseen material, including footage shot during the making of That's the Way It Is that never made the final cut. The footage had no sounds. Over the next 2 years, Baz and his team restored it, cleaned it, synced it to existing audio, and rebuilt it frame by frame. That is painstaking, incredible work. They also uncovered a 45-minute recording of Elvis speaking about his own life, candidly in his own voice, and all of that became EPiC. That's the Way It Is a simpler proposition on paper. Director Dennis Sanders, a camera crew, Elvis Presley, Las Vegas, 1970. Elvis is 35 years old. He's been away from live performance for a number of years. He's been in the army, in the movies, and he's rehearsing his summer season at the International Hotel. No grand design, just a camera and a man and the good sense to keep rolling. So we have two documentaries, one enormous, one quiet, the exact same subject. I want to try and describe what it actually felt like to watch EPiC in IMAX, because number one, it was my first IMAX experience, which at 30 years old is incredible. Why did I wait so long? I think what that gave me was such a personal experience, such a personal attachment to him, because you could see the sweat on his face, the marks on his skin, the way he leans into the microphone and he knows what he's going to do to the people watching him. He was commanding that audience, and it was so thrilling to watch. And then I discussed this in my previous video, but it was during Burning Love, one of my favorite Elvis Presley songs and has been for years. But during that song, it was when that thought came in, I'm falling for a man on a cinema screen who died before I was born. And that's not the first time that's happened to me. I love old Hollywood films. Like Laurence Olivier in Wuthering Heights is like, I love him so much. It's not the first time, but a man who was himself on screen and so magnetic and so large, especially on the IMAX screen, larger than any life could ever give. And I think that's what Baz Luhrmann understood that nobody had quite managed before. Over time, culture does something cruel to icons like Marilyn, like Elvis. It shrinks them. It turns them into costumes and impressions and sound bites. It makes them safe, manageable, and small. But putting that footage into IMAX and letting it breathe at that full scale, letting see the sweat and the skin and the control and the joy, gave Elvis back his magnitude. Not his myth, his magnitude, and those are different things. The myth is what we made. The magnitude is who he was. And in that cinema, I understood properly for the first time why people fainted, why strangers wrote him letters every single day of his adult life, why nearly 50 years after his death, we are still making films, writing essays, making YouTube videos, still trying to get close to him. Because there is something there, something real and specific and overwhelming, and EPiC let me feel that at its full scale. But here's the thing about That's the Way It Is that I keep coming back to. EPiC is a revelation. That's the Way It Is a secret. It's quieter. It's less designed. I mean, most films are quieter next to a Baz Luhrmann film. And Baz Luhrmann is my favorite director, modern director. So I say that with the biggest amount of love and respect. Dennis Sanders wasn't trying to restore an icon or give him back magnitude or bring him to a new generation. He was just there with him in the room with a camera. And what the camera caught, because cameras catch things directors don't always plan for, is Elvis being Elvis. Ordinary in a way, and not ordinary as in unremarkable, ordinary as in human. Rehearsing, laughing, getting something wrong and doing it again. We can all relate to that. And that's where I think the answer lives to my question, I think. Why does footage of this man do this to a person? Because that's the way it is, strips away every layer of myth, and what you find underneath isn't smaller, it's more extraordinary. I keep coming back and thinking about those 68 boxes underground in Kansas. There was more of Elvis, footage that nobody had seen, that wasn't packaged or approved or released. A version of Elvis that had just been sitting in the dark for 50 years waiting for us to discover. And some of that footage, and this is the part that really gets to me, was shot during the making of That's the Way It Is. Outtakes from the same sessions, the same era, the same cameras, the same man. Material that didn't make the 1970 cut and then just disappeared underground until Baz went looking. So in a very literal sense, these aren't two separate films about Elvis. They're two cuts of the same attempt to capture him. And what got kept, what got lost, and what got found again half a century later, that's its own kind of story about how we see people, about what we choose to preserve and what we let slip into the dark. That's the Way It Is was made in real time. Dennis Sanders had no ending because he didn't know that there were only 7 years left. He just pointed a camera at a man and let it be. EPiC is made with all that knowledge. Baz knows the entire arc of Elvis. And even with this restored footage that is genuinely raw and genuinely unguarded, Baz is still deciding what that means. The sequence he builds, the music he places underneath the moment, he's an author and he's writing Elvis with enormous love and skill. But I want to be clear about something because I've seen takes on EPiC that I don't really agree with. That authorship Baz has doesn't make it less true. EPiC felt genuinely unmediated to me. Not despite Baz's hand, but because of what he found. Those boxes held something that no amount of myth-making put there. So here's what I've decided after sitting with both films, after going back and forth between them, after trying to work out what it is they're both doing. EPiC is the door in, especially for the younger generation, the people that don't really know much about Elvis or haven't really experienced him like I really kind of hadn't in that way. It gives you the scale, the magnitude, the full overwhelming reality of Elvis Presley as a performer. And if you haven't understood why people respond to him the way you do, if the hysteria has always felt slightly bigger, exaggerated, EPiC will fix that. You'll understand exactly why. And That's the Way It is what you find on the other side of the door. The quieter, more specific, more human truth of where all that magnitude comes from. The man in the room before the lights go up who was already extraordinary before anybody's watching. And I keep thinking about the geography of Elvis Presley's life. He wanted to travel the world, but he couldn't, we know, because of Colonel Parker. This man whose impact was global, was physically confined in ways that the more you sit with it is really devastating. And yet, in these two films, one made in 1970, one assembled from footage found in salt mines 50 years later, he gets to travel the world. He fills an IMAX screen in 2026 and makes a woman in the audience in Australia nearly scream when Burning Love starts. The man who couldn't go anywhere is somehow everywhere. I loved Elvis before EPiC. I'll love him long after it. But EPiC deepened something for me. It made me understand in a way that I hadn't quite before what it means that Elvis Presley existed. That there was a human being with a voice and a way of moving through the world who did what he did. Not a symbol, not a myth, a person. And that's the way it is. Quiet, unassuming, a little rough around the edges, it was the 70s, is where you get to find that person most clearly. To see the work underneath the icon, to understand that the overwhelming thing you feel watching him isn't hysteria and it isn't nostalgia. It's the correct response to something genuinely extraordinary. My EPiC review is linked below if you want to go watch it. Subscribe if you want more. There's a lot more Elvis coming and a lot more classic film. I hope you stick around for it. Thank you so much for watching me prattle on about Elvis. I'll keep doing it for a long time to come. I'll see you in the next one.